Picture this. You're starting your healing journey. You want to go see a therapist. But when you try to book one, they only have openings in the middle of your workday. You're working 9 to 5. When do you have the time to go? Well, I'm here to tell you that you don't have to settle anymore. So when it comes to finding the right doctor with ZocDoc, you've got options. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality, in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment. Appointments made through ZocDoc also happen fast, typically within 24 to 72 hours of booking. You can even score same-day appointments. Stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/lovely to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/lovely, ZocDoc.com/lovely.
Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
Hello, hello. Welcome back to Lovely. I'm your host, Mehak, and just like that, it's Friday. I don't know about you guys, but I am so ready to summer like summer has never summered before. I was watching all the Coachella highlights recently, and Charlie XCX said something that truly hurt my soul. She was like, "Brat summer is over." Excuse you? Brat summer is not over. I had so much fun doing my own version of Brat summer, so I am definitely bringing it back, and I'm so excited. Speaking of things I am so excited about, last week we had the loveliest crossover episode with Aiden Taylor, who is also the host of Banterly, another podcast by Immigrant Media. And I loved talking to Aiden. He is just one of those people you can talk to about anything and everything. We had such a grounding conversation about dating on your own timeline. Anytime someone feels like they're behind, or if you feel like you're behind, I'll tell you what I told him. And I was like, think about it like everyone's watching the same show, right? And some people are on season 5, but you're just getting to the best part of season 2, and that's okay too. So if you haven't heard that one, definitely go give it a listen after this. But today, the conversation is going to be about a kind of relationship that doesn't get talked about enough. The ones where love is there, but space might be the thing keeping it alive. So let's talk about my guest today. No. I'm so excited because I have my best friend. We've known each other for a decade now. And his name is Waleed. I love him so much. We'll get into how we met, but over the course of years, he has become one of the most important people in my life. He is so emotionally intelligent, so supportive, deeply insightful, and truly a ride or die. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Waleed.
I noticed that in the introduction, you said best. You left it at there. We could have gone best. But we're going to take a note and talk about that later offline.
We definitely shall, and I feel like you tell this story a lot better than me. So tell everyone how we met.
No, let's tag team this one if we can. Okay. So many years ago, we were interviewing for a teller position at TD at Bramley City Centre. And it was the most intense, marathon of an interview process that I've ever been to. There was 20 plus people there, and there was 3 different segments. The first segment, you had to introduce yourself in a room full of people, and me being my extra self, I was like, it's my birthday. Everyone say happy birthday. Do you remember that?
Is it actually your birthday?
I don't know. I made that up to get the job.
Here I am saying all the nicest things about you. And you're like, I'm a liar.
I literally lied on my resume and lied that it was my birthday. I was like, everyone say happy birthday to me. So that was like the first part. The second part was we had to do like a group kind
It was
of
a presentation.
Yes. And you and I were placed in the same group.
And obviously, because we're both the main characters, everyone was like, okay, who's going to like speak up during this presentation? We're like, us.
Yeah, I was like, me and Mehak. And guess who got the job? Me and Mehak. So anyway, we ended up getting selected from like this like, group of like 20 people. We were shortlisted, just me and Mehak. Anyways, so then in North York, Toronto, that's where like the training happened for a week to help us like train to become tellers. And so I'm on the GO train. Mehak is, I think, on the GO train as well. And as I'm getting off, she's talking to this like poor lady beside her who has no idea what's going on. She's like, do I get off here for the TD training? The lady's like, what? Like, what? Who are you? She's like, do I get off? And I was like, oh, I remember this girl. I was like, Mehak, come with me. Anyway, we got there so early. We just had to get a coffee. We're like chit-chatting, having a good time. We're running really late. And we have to like go upstairs to actually attend the training. Turns out we're in the wrong building. We're running around. It starts raining. We have coffees in our hand. I have mud splashed on my pants. We walk in late. Disrupting the entire class. We're like, we're here. The only two seats that are available are right at the front of the instructor. We're doing our walk of shame to the front. Coffees in hand, mud all over my pants. Anyway, the entire time, we were just laughing and giggling. I want you actually to tell a story about, remember we had to recreate that scene about like you pretending to like a robber comes in?
Oh my God. So for anyone that doesn't know what TD is a bank. And we had to do a training where we had to act like we were getting fake robbed.
Taking fire, need assistance.
I was the teller and Waleed was acting like the robber. And we couldn't stop laughing and I had to held up training because I couldn't get past it because I kept laughing. But long story short, I feel like every day, every year since then has been the same. We just get together and we giggle.
A decade ago, we started giggling. And since every single year, the giggling has just turned into laughter. It's turned into giggles. There's been some cries here. There's been some hugs there. But it's been such a lovely friendship. And I don't want it to ever end.
Same. Oh my God, stop. Don't make me cry now. But yeah, anytime I need to have like a good little cry session, whether there's a reason behind it or there's no reason behind it, Waleed is on speed dial. We stumbled upon something that I want to talk about, and I don't want to take the glory away from this hot take. So I'm going to pass it on to you. But this is a hot take in relationships that you have around a setup of a relationship. So what is this hot take, Waleed?
Hot takes.
The hot take is I don't think that two partners need to live together to actually have a sustainable, long-term, healthy relationship. And in fact, I feel that if people live separately and have their own kind of spaces where they can be, that will actually contribute to healthier, long-term relationships. Now, how I came to this realization and this hot take, if you will, has been through obviously my own experience of being in relationships, but I would say it was something that kind of came to the forefront in my most recent relationship, which has, we've decided to part ways. This last relationship, it kind of got to a point where, things were progressing and we were talking about potentially like, getting a place and moving in and what have you. I remember just feeling so anxious at the thought of that. And it didn't have necessarily to do with the person, that I was with, but it was more so, I think, my own trauma kind of coming to the surface and me coming to that realization that, is this even something that I can even do? So a little bit of context without completely throwing my entire family under the bus. I don't come from the most Functional. Yeah, like functional family. Yes, I guess we can be happy-go-lucky like here and there, but I don't come from the most functional household. Growing up, there was a lot of, chaos. There was unpredictability at times, like there wasn't a foundation that kind of felt where your nervous system could actually feel very calm and relaxed. And so the first kind of like 30-ish years of my life, home for me didn't feel very relaxing and very calm and a place where I can just kind of go and just relax. And I think, a lot of, I think maybe immigrant children can probably empathize with that. Parents like not necessarily getting along, them not having the tools to actually communicate with each other in a way that is actually effective and actually healthy, which, creates an unstable kind of household. So that fear, I think, is something that I carry with me. And it's something obviously that I'm like working through myself independently and also with the assistance of a therapist. But when the conversation kind of came up with my, previous partner of like moving in, my entire nervous system was like breaking down. I was like trying to get through a day without hyperventilating. Like, what does this mean? Because, the fear in my mind was like, I'm going to recreate the dynamic that I have worked so hard to actually escape. I've worked really hard to create a very lovely life for myself, where my nervous system finally feels calm and at peace. And finally, I can get through an entire day without kind of having this thought in the back of my mind, oh my gosh, is there going to be some sort of unpredictable fight that I was not, preparing for? I can get through an entire day with silence. And I'm like, do I really want to put myself in a position where there's a risk of that happening again? I sat with myself, once kind of like, we parted ways, my previous partner and I was like, what is actually something that would work for me? Because of course, a relationship is a symbiotic relationship between two people where there's like, compromise required. A part of love is not you just showing up and being like, I want everything my way. And, I'm not going to at all compromise on what the other person wants. That's not a relationship. That's, well, I hate to break it to you, you're a narcissist, and that's not who I am. And so I was thinking to myself, and I'm like, what would make sense to me? The truth is that I feel I need a sense of like control in knowing that there's going to be a like stability in where I'm living. And right now in my life, what feels like the best way that I can actually have that happen is having a place of my own. And having, whoever I'm dating at the time or in a relationship with, they have a place of their own. And, we can share spaces where, they stay at mine or I stay at theirs, or we take like vacations together and we're still kind of, we still have a life together, but it's just we have different kind of living arrangements. There's a couple of reasons why I think that this is actually healthier than long-term than like actually living together, because I find that when you live together and you're so intimately intertwined, you get so enmeshed and you get so almost like interdependent where the appeal of the other person actually starts to deteriorate over time. And then, you need to talk to like a couples therapist and you need to like, have all of these and like small little things are annoying them. And I personally think, I think you're just too close to the person. And I think having a little bit of distance actually maintains a bit of mystery, a bit of allure. It actually creates a little bit of like sexual tension. You actually are like anticipating to like want to see that person. It's kind of like you're always dating, and dating is fun. Why can't we just continue that?
Dating is sexy and it often gets lost in translation. I want you to finish your story, but there's a few things you said that I want to go back to. And I think a lot of how we show up in relationships and how we learn to navigate them does come from our upbringing and childhood. We've talked about it so much. And I think the one thing that I wanted to revisit is you talked a little bit about your connection to immigrant identity, but we didn't get to hear it fully. So touch on that and then let's layer that back in, because I feel like we've had the opposite effect. This has made you want more distance, where proximity makes me feel closer to someone, it makes me feel safer. So I'm not saying like I'm grown up, I've been anxious, and I feel like I am still anxious in some parts, leaning more towards secure, but it's almost had the opposite effect. But it does come from being raised in a home which wasn't very functional. If you can take me back a little bit to your connection to immigrant identity, that would be helpful for, I think, everyone to kind of understand where you're coming from.
I was born in Saudi Arabia, and then my parents are both Pakistani, and they moved to Canada with 3 young children, not knowing a lick of English, like not really knowing like what they're going to do. I'm totally talking about my parents. You asked me the question about me, and I'm like, well, my parents' story. So anyway, they moved here when we were very, very young. I think I was like still in kindergarten, and that's where we kind of started our life. I have so much empathy for my parents. I have I actually like revere them so much. I actually really look up to them. To completely move your entire life from one country where you have all of your family connections, you have all of your friends, you have your entire job, you have your career, you have your mother. Imagine leaving your mother behind. Like that's so hard. I'm so close to my mom. If I even think about like leaving her behind, I will cry. And so obviously if you're going to do that, and that's going to create inevitably friction in a relationship while also trying to raise children, and all while doing that with one salary, not knowing English. Anyway, so I think my immigrant kind of identity is very similar to many South Asian people who have, moved to Canada at a very young age. There was financial struggle, of course, which also kind of layered on to the struggle of like being an immigrant. My experience of being an immigrant is very similar to many people, where there was like a feeling of I don't fully belong, but I have to kind of figure it out. I come from this Pakistani household where things are done differently from like what I'm experiencing in school, and having to kind of navigate that, figuring out what your identity is as you're growing older, as you're becoming an adolescent, where all you want to do is be accepted by your peers, but like your peers are very different from you, and you have to kind of go back home, and you're kind of living this like dual personality in many ways. You start to then also kind of question like, am I whitewashed? Like I don't also want to be whitewashed either. I also want to be really close to kind of my roots. And so kind of navigating what that kind of feels like, I think my immigrant identity has always been, and still kind of is to this point, figuring out what the balance is between what my roots are and kind of the country in kind of which I live, and where I kind of fit into all of that. And that figuring out piece and that understanding what my identity is, it's like an everyday conversation that I have with myself. Who am I, and how do I kind of fit into this world that my parents decided to emigrate to?
I feel seen just by listening to that. What I also don't like is like, why do we have to choose which box? Like, why can't it just be outside of the box, right? Because I struggle through that too, because my parents are traditional but liberal, but I am way more like liberal and modern than them, but I also still have some traditional roots. But I think for me, it comes from growing up in a family where constantly seeking approval. Right? Like, do you approve this? Do you approve this? Do you approve this? Like, dating wasn't allowed. Going out with friends wasn't allowed. Wearing certain clothes wasn't allowed. So you start to doubt your own decision making, and you start to doubt, who am I? What am I capable of? So now when, I'm in my early 30s, you're in your early 30s, you're still doubting, like, who are you as a person? What do you like? What do you don't like? And then when you bring in this layered version of the traditional setup of a relationship doesn't work for me, you also probably had to go through a lot of years going back and forth, like, wait, this can't be it. This can't be my reality because I'd never seen this grown up, or I haven't seen it around people. So you struggle with that too. In a way, it's kind of like, I'm sure there's a lot of people that have this arrangement, right? But there's a lot of people that don't get it, just like a lot of people don't get polyamorous relationships. And there's a few things that are playing out. Dating right now is hard as it is. Then you add in another layer of being a person of color. Then you add in another layer of sexuality. Then you layer another layer of, hey, this setup that not many people would want. Are you okay with it? And now do you want to date me? And then on top of it, do we connect? And do we vibe? And do we have sexual chemistry? Holy shit. Like, so we're single, right?
We are capital S, capital INGLE _ italicized single.
Shit. So, okay. So you have this is what works for you.
This is what works for me. And kind of as you were speaking, another thing that kind of came to my mind, another reason why I think this arrangement is actually ideal for many people to consider, especially for people I think who are immigrants, is exactly that. Like, we were never really given the space or the time to figure out who we are independently. There was always another opinion. There was, the mom's approval. There was dad's kind of approval. There was brothers. There was their sisters. There was society. Like, I come from a Pakistani background, and this concept of, I'm going to speak Urdu, log kya kahenge, which essentially translates to what will people say, has you in shackles. You have to think 10 times before you make a decision because log kya kahenge. And so growing up as an immigrant, I think many people can empathize with this and relate to this, is you are always constantly making decisions based on the approval and the validation of others. And so, and then you kind of get into a relationship and there's this expectation of like moving in. And you never really know who you are because you're constantly just doing things for other people. And we haven't really learned like effective communication skills. That wasn't really demonstrated in our household. I speak for myself, it wasn't in mine. And so I think what we've learned growing up is people pleasing, So add on people pleasing and you're still not actually speaking about what you want because you're behaving in ways that you want your partner to accept you, And so I think living alone is actually very healing because you get to create a space that is just for you, yourself, me, myself, and I'm trying to do me, myself, and I, but in the you, yourself, and yourself. But you get what I'm saying. No one has authority in that space to say what you can or cannot do. But you can still have a beautiful, beautiful relationship with someone by sharing that. They don't have to come into your space and like make it their own. You don't have to go into their space and make it their own. You have one thing in this huge planet, the small little condo or whatever it is, that is just yours, And then outside of that is everything that you share. So outside of the four walls of that condo or whatever you have, you share a relationship. Outside of that, you share friendships. Outside of that, you share a relationship with your family. But in that like 450 or 500, whatever, 50 square foot, it's just you. How lovely.
Sergeant and Mr. Smith, you're gonna love this house.
Bunk beds in a closet?
There's no field manual for finding the right home. But when you do, USAA Homeowners Insurance can help protect it the right way. Restrictions apply.
You are my best friend, but, we are our own individual beings. And I think there's certain aspects that I agree with. So for example, when I said growing up in the household that I grew up with, it almost had the opposite effect on me in terms of I didn't like when people weren't around or when there was distance. So for me to feel safe in a relationship, I like being close to someone and spending time with them. So you remember this, but I was in a relationship with a firefighter. We were together for 5 years and we lived an hour-ish away and I didn't drive. So I would only see him once a week, or if it was a good week, it would be twice a week. And that too, hiding it from my mom. So once we finally got together once or twice a week, we couldn't keep our hands off of each other. And we would spend good quality time together. And it was fun. I mean, we did fight sometimes, but it was fun. But because there was so much distance, when we did get together, we just wanted to be in each other's company. We just wanted to chill and be relaxed. So there wasn't time for adventure and time for that. So I feel like now, my ideal relationship wouldn't be to be codependent with someone. You have your own life. I have my own life. You have your group of friends. I have my group of friends. But after it gets to a certain point, I do want to live with my person because I feel like that's what makes me happy. Maybe my hot take is I think we should definitely normalize separate bedrooms. I can't sleep with someone in the same bed, but even now they're breathing. It really irritates me.
Stop breathing. No, honestly, I think that is such a reasonable thing to ask of your partner. Don't breathe.
Don't breathe.
People listen to this be like, you guys sound like neurotic. You're the problem. Me being like, I don't want you to live with me. You being like, don't breathe.
Yeah.
I feel like this is so reasonable. You're asking your partner not to breathe. I'm asking my partner, don't come near me. You're not allowed. You're not allowed to step foot into my apartment.
Listen, we are in therapy, so we're working through it. But speaking of therapy, when you were telling me what works for you, and I respect it, but a part of me also thinks, are you choosing to be okay with this setup and avoid doing the deeper work? Because I'm not saying therapy will heal all, but it will maybe give you the tools to figure out how to navigate that anxiousness when you are that close with someone.
I'm not saying that this setup is something that I want forever. I think all we have is just right now. We don't know if tomorrow's coming. The past is already past. What therapy has done for me is, I think, helped me become aware of what my fears are, what my anxieties are, what I'm projecting, what my blind sides are. Now, therapy is not a magic wand that's going to completely erase all of this trauma that I have built up. That is work that I have to do, and that is going to take years. Have I become aware of what my fears are? Absolutely. But I think a more balanced approach for me is becoming aware of what my fears are and becoming aware of what my anxieties are and figuring out a way that I can work with that and work towards healing. So am I saying that I'm not ever going to live with a partner for the rest of my life? Probably not. I don't think that I'm avoiding healing just by wanting this space. I think right now I'm acknowledging that I have lots to work on, and I can work on that in a balanced way. And I can maybe over time, it will look like, let's spend a week together at someone's place, maybe, and then that'll kind of evolve. Let's spend a month together. Maybe that'll evolve into, why don't we get rent a space separately where we live together, but we still have our individual places, and then maybe that'll turn into, okay, we've been together for 20 years or 15, 20 years. Maybe it's time now to actually merge, into one home. So I think also, there's this whole concept of he's an avoidant, she's an avoidant. And we start to label people really early stages in dating. I think some of that may have to do with we put so much pressure on people and there's these societal expectations of what it means to kind of date and what the progression of that looks like, which I think can come across as someone being avoidant. So let me give you an example. Say, for example, on a Sunday night, you're swiping on an app and you match with someone. I'm talking about this from a quote unquote avoidance perspective. And they're working and they're healing, and they're doing the work, whatever. And you go on a date and things are going well. Great. A couple of dates go in, you guys are now dating. That avoidant in their mind, I'm just talking about my perspective. In their mind, there is this fear of now all of these societal expectations have been put onto me, where now these dates are going to go well, and the blueprint of what society tells me to do is I have to now get married, I have to now combine finances, I now have to move into this home, I now have to get a dog, and now I have to have a baby who breathes, and that's so scary. That's so scary because that avoidant is also having to process so much trauma. And that avoidant, aka me.
Well, go to therapy.
No, we're going to therapy. But therapy.
Are you though, babe?
Listen.
Tell me when the last time you went to therapy.
It's been a hot minute, but we're working on it. In my apartment.
In your apartment. Watching YouTube. But we're going to therapy. Where?
I did not know that I was going to get dragged.
Okay, listen, you can sit here and do whatever you please and breathe. But what I'm saying is that we actually talked about attachment styles in our previous episode. You heard it with Dr. Wendy Walsh. And while I agree, it's not always, it doesn't always make sense to label people in terms of what their attachment styles are, but they do show up that way sometimes. And it's not, yes. And I love the fact that you're aware. I'm so self-aware. I know I have this problem. But the next step then is working on it, right? Which you do a lot. And you've come a long way, and so have I. I'm still working on it. But I feel like not everyone is like you and I. Everyone kind of just has this mask and then, or whatever, wears this badge and they're like, okay, well, this is me. I'm not going to change it. Right. And that messes people up. If you're an avoidant, don't fucking date.
But you know where we can help though? I think creating space to allow people to be complex and flawed.
Sure, but how much space?
Now, okay, so I think that we can help people by understanding that we are all very complex and we're all trying our best. Maybe not all trying our best, like 90% trying our best. What we can do to help people is allow them to kind of be a little bit messy, however, expecting good communication. So for me, I know what my fears are. I know what my anxieties are. I know what my trauma is. I can show up with self-awareness and say, hey, this living arrangement doesn't work with me. Rather than doing the avoiding thing and just dipping and like leaving the person on red, which is incredibly immature, I can use my effective communication skills and just say, hey, I'm feeling triggered. And this is the history of why I'm feeling triggered. This has nothing to do with you. If we can figure out an arrangement that actually works for both you and I, great, let's proceed moving forward. That's how I think we can make it easier for dating and maybe remove our own societal expectations of what a traditional relationship looks like and work together as, again, a partnership where you talk about what you want, I talk about what I want, and then maybe we can figure something out in the middle that works for both parties.
I co-sign that. I think communication is very important, but listen, who am I to judge? Like, I am not perfect by any means, but I think taking that extra step of, yes, you're aware and you're still working on your things, but communication can be learned and like worked on. And I feel like people don't show up as maturely as they could. But then again, they feel uncomfortable having to feel things and having to deal with things. And it's easier to just not say anything at all than say something.
And that's another reason why I think having a place of your own is actually really good, is kind of what you just said, is having that space to kind of just be your complex self. I mean, I don't mean to get like super spiritual, but the entire purpose of this existence for me is like it's a journey of figuring out who you are. Relationships, any of this has nothing to do with the other person, it has everything to do with you. So in any relationship that I've been in, whether that's been platonic, whether that's been, romantic, whether that's been with family, it's all been a self-discovery of who I am, what my triggers are, what my fears are, what my anxieties are. If it's taking me like my entire life to figure out who I am, and every single chapter I'm still discovering who I am, having like a place of my own is really important to kind of continue to do that self-discovery, because I can't confidently say that I will ever know who I am, because who I thought I was yesterday I'm an evolved version of that today, and who I'm going to be like tomorrow is going to be completely different. So I think having a space of your own is actually it's almost like a level of security as well, because when we talk about people evolving in relationships, you can either evolve together or you can evolve separately. If you start dating someone today, who you are today is not going to be who you are 10, 15 years from now, if you even stay together, So if you like decide that like, hey, like we're evolving differently, at least you have a space of your own and they have a space of their own. I think that this structure of like enmeshing everything together, I don't know if it doesn't really take into consideration the natural evolution of a human being in the context of a relationship. And I'm not saying that people are not going to evolve. I'm all for evolution, but let's just make it easier on ourselves and just live separately. Because if we decide to part ways, that's fine. Like, I'm going to go back to my place.
I know exactly what you're saying. I don't see it like that. I feel you don't know what's going to happen. You truly don't know what tomorrow has in store. So that to me is trying to control the future. And I feel like when you are trying to control the future, you are denying yourself to live your life authentically because you're operating out of fear. Now, again, I'm just truly saying it from my perspective, right? Like, I've been hurt in relationships. You've been hurt in relationships. And that hurt, we now act out sometimes when we're dating someone new in fear. Like, oh, he resembles my previous partner. What if he does the same thing again? Even though you're having a great time and they're showing no signs for you to doubt them, you're like, no, I'm just going to cut it off right now so I don't hurt myself. But like, what if, again, I mean, then also I believe in like everything happens for a reason. But like, what if that could have been your connection? Both realities could be true, right? That's just how I see it. But I also feel that sometimes we are so scared to go through hurt that we deny ourselves the moments that are really like enjoyable and that we would look back at and be like, yeah, that shitty thing happened as a result of it, but I wouldn't give up these like 8 years that I spent with this person. You can always have a prenup.
Hilton brings you new ways to stay, with experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
That's your money saying it's time for a McDonald's run. Because with new McValue at McDonald's, you get more than you expect. Like buy a 6-piece McNuggets and add a McChicken for just $1. Your money says let's go. Get more than you expect with new McValue. Prices and participation may vary. Valid for item of equal or lesser value.
Okay, so we're single now. How are we approaching dating now? Like, is this a conversation you will have really early on?
When is it appropriate to have a conversation about like living arrangement? I feel like too early, the person would be like, listen, I don't even want to go on a second date with you, let alone live with you, you know? I think like an appropriate time to talk about this, maybe like introduce this idea is like when you're like, it's starting to feel like you're exclusively dating one another. Like you haven't had the conversation that we're exclusively dating, but it's like kind of feeling like it's getting there. Just to kind of figure out like how that person feels about it. I think that would kind of be like an appropriate time because, you know, you need to kind of communicate it early on enough so you don't waste anyone's time, but not so deep into it where the person's like, well, I had no idea that like, you know, you felt this way.
Do you think this setup that you want to have in your relationships could change if you find yourself with the right person?
I think to start, I think the concept of the right person, I think the right relationship is something that's actually built. I don't think that the right person necessarily exists. So I think it's something that would take time. And in that time, there would need to be a level of trust that's actually built, a level of comfortability that's actually built. And my nervous system actually feeling like, yes, this is like the right decision. And that's going to take time. How long that's going to take, I don't know. For me, I think what is sustainable, I think in the beginning is having your own spaces and continuing to date and kind of keeping that like fun element alive and talking about moving in if and when it's required. And some scenarios where it is required is, raising a child together. Aside from that, like, give me another example of like why it's required to live together.
Because you want to spend time with your person and you want to go to bed in separate bedrooms and then wake up in the morning and, be in the same bedroom.
So going based off of that, why can't that can still happen, but it can happen like you're staying like a week together?
I think there's different variations of it. And maybe I'm being ignorant or naive, but like I respect the setup. When I try to picture it, I'm like, no. But you know why though? I'll tell you why. Another reason. You and I are in the same boat in terms of we love being in our space. We love being by ourselves and doing things on our own. And we can do that confidently. But my entire life, I have been told how to live my life, right? Like growing up, middle school, high school, college, like every single decision, do this, don't do that. And especially when it comes to dating, like for all in my 20s, you can't date, you can't talk to boys, you can't do this. And then all of a sudden at 25, well, hey babe, when are you getting married? How do you expect me to have the tools and the skills to be in a healthy relationship when you have told me that it was bad for the longest time? And then you've told me that you can't even look at boys, you can't talk to boys, let alone kiss boys, sleep with boys, moving in. Oh my God, it's like the forbidden fruit. So it's human nature. When someone's like, don't do this for the longest time, you would get shunned or it's not good for you. You're curious. What is this? What does it feel like? What is it all about? You see people that you're going to university with live with people and they're having a grand old time. Of course, it's the highlight reel that you see. There's some downside to it too. But maybe that's my trauma. Maybe my trauma is that I am so focused on doing things that I didn't get to do that I forget to really figure out, do I want this?
I see what you're saying. Like the appeal of living with someone almost comes from the experience of like being told that you can't do it. And so it feels like the appealing thing to do. Like that's something that you now want to experience because you were always told that that's not something that you can do.
Exactly. And the thing also is like we're both in this process of figuring out what we want, who we are. I don't know if I want to get married. Like I truly don't know. That could change tomorrow. Again, if I meet someone that makes me feel that way, but I am so turned off by the whole thing.
So I think that there might be a connection between our hot takes here. You don't know if you want to get married, but you're okay with like, a long-term relationship. That's something that you're aspiring for. And I am not comfortable like living with someone. Both of us are talking about a fear here. Now, your fear is some sort of like, emotional, it seems like there's some sort of like emotional kind of intimacy where like marriage seems very scary because it's so like legal and it's so enmeshed and it's so together. Now, that's exactly what I'm talking about, but from a living perspective where I'm like, that's so close, that's close in proximity.
In a way, what we're doing is we are decentralizing men from our lives because, well, I don't want to speak for you, but I feel like I was never boy crazy, but I did like dating and always having a boyfriend or whatever. But like, life is peaceful. Life is good. Can't tell you the last time I cried. And when I'm with a boy, I'm crying, And that piece is so close to my heart. So I think in a way, all of us are making ourselves the main characters of our lives. And that looks like you living separately sometimes and me maybe not getting married. Right now, my mom is listening to this and hyperventilating.
But I think that this evolution is going to take time because people are changing, times are changing, women are becoming a lot more aware of like, how it actually should be. And they're actually correcting, trauma that's been passed down from generations to generations to generations. And, we're kind of in a bit of like a transitory period where both parties need some time to figure out how this will actually work. And just kind of like forcing traditional kind of expectations of what like a traditional relationship looks like. I don't know if that's boding well for many people because lots of people are getting divorced because they're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole by having traditional living arrangements and marriage arrangements with untraditional values now where power dynamics are shifting, where it doesn't matter if I'm a woman, like I have an opinion, it doesn't matter if I'm a woman, I'm earning more and I'm career oriented. That's wonderful. It doesn't matter if I'm a woman because I want to go work. Why don't you stay at home and raise the kids? So that's going to take years to adjust to.
We are seeing more and more of it. I think to truly kind of tie together, like what I've learned and what I'm learning is like, I support like whatever works for your nervous system. You being in a relationship doesn't need to have the trade-off of your emotional safety. Relationships are about compromise, right? So do you feel that when you find yourself in one, you're sharing a life with them, you're sharing your space with them and, sharing everything with them? Is this fear rooted in, losing your individuality and kind of like as a way to maintain your individuality?
I don't know when it happened. This concept of like individuality was almost like weaponized. Relationships definitely do require compromise. And I think a beauty of relationships is actually sacrificing like parts of yourself to actually include this person into your life, bringing them into your emotional world, being vulnerable with them, and practicing, shedding your ego to actually be in a symbiotic relationship with this person. That being said, I think that maintaining your individuality is really important because, and I'm going to answer this from a more spiritual perspective, this entire journey that we're on from the moment that we're born to the moment that we die is an independent journey. The relationships that we enter into throughout our lifetime here, whether they're platonic, whether they're romantic, or whether they're with family, every single relationship, every single experience is showing to you who you are and parts of yourself that you have not discovered. Even the toughest of heartbreaks are actually just you. It's about you. Like, why am I so hurt? And why, like, what is this trying to show me? So maintaining your independence is really important, especially when you grow up in a household where you learn things like people pleasing and fawning and all of these things to actually be accepted, because what that's actually doing is that you are sacrificing your own authenticity to actually make a relationship work, which is really dangerous because individuality is all we have. We are all we have, and then we have to go back to whatever it is that you believe. I believe, you go back to your creator, ultimately, and everything else that happens, it's not guaranteed. So to answer your question, maintaining my individuality is really important because that is all I have. Everything else is gifted and there is a timestamp on it. And I don't know what that timestamp is going to be. All I know is that I have myself, I have my individuality, I have my spirituality, and that needs to be protected because that is everything. Do not compromise. Don't compromise because ultimately you have to be answerable to yourself. And it's so important to remain authentic. Don't change for nobody, especially a man. Ew.
I feel like the conversation was definitely more serious than we usually are. Like otherwise we're always like giggling and laughing. We'll have to have you back on another episode.
Oh my God, I will be back like in a heartbeat. This was so much fun.
Right?
This was so much fun. Yeah.
Thanks, Waleed. Lovely is an Immigrantly media production. This episode was produced by Sadia Khan and Shay Yu, written by me, Mehak. Music, sound design, and editing by Lou Raskin. Other music is by Epidemic Sound. Tune in every Friday for more Lovely.